Well, hello, my fellow friends, my fellow neighbors, and my fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. We are so excited to join all of you today for something very special. Welcome to episode number 1 of Empowered Publicity's Neighborly Reviews. My name is John Masiulionis, the manager here at Empowered Publicity. Thank you so much for spending some time with us wherever you are and wherever you may be. You might be taking a look at your screen right now and saying, John, you're not alone. That is very true. I am not alone. We are never alone. Of course, it's a message that we always like to be able to remind our little ones all across the country and all around the world. Someone who we have been very blessed to be able to create a friendship with over the course of these past several months. If you're a longtime follower of Empowered Publicity, we've been very fortunate to be able to be of service to children's authors across the country and around the world. And a lot of our inspiration for the work that we do for the children comes from one of our favorite neighbors, Mr. Rogers, of course, Mr. Rogers from the beloved children's television program, the long-running program that aired on PBS for many, many, many years. And I am super excited to officially welcome into the Empowered Publicity family today. You remember him, you love him as Mr. McFeely on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He is David Newell. He's officially joining the Empowered Publicity family today. And beginning today, David and I, are going to be delivering heartfelt children's books from our favorite neighbors from around the world with all of you and sharing these once a month here at Empowered Publicity. David, I'm really excited to spend some time with you, not only today, but the coming months ahead. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And officially, we welcome you into the Empowered Publicity family. You're excited for Neighborly Reviews.
Well, thank you, John. Here I am. And I'll be doing this really as David Newell. My capacity is David Newell in the Neighborly Reviews. And we have a few books to talk about today. But before we do that, I think you have a few things to mention, right?
I do, yes. David and I are opening up our hearts. We're uniting our hearts to be able to give back to the children in need, not only across the country and around the world, but specifically for our neighbors in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That is where David still hangs his hat on his end of things. Each episode of the Neighborly Reviews here at Empowered Publicity, we are going to be giving back to our newest friends and neighbors at Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh, which was founded in 1981. It was a wonderful year. I believe that was the year that I was born, if I'm not mistaken. It's an independent affiliate of Reading is Fundamental, which is the national non-for-profit, one of the oldest and largest non-for-profit children's literacy organizations in the United States. Their mission is to be able to provide children with the resources, motivation, and opportunities to develop a lifelong love of reading. They specifically work to mitigate the literacy and achievement gaps that many children from low-income households face even before they start kindergarten. Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh takes care of well over 20,000 children in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area that come from low-income families. So we are proud to be able to donate from each episode of Neighborly Reviews a contribution to Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh. We encourage all of you, our friends, our neighbors, our fellow shining stars, to not only subscribe to Empowered Publicity's official YouTube channel if you are new here to Empowered Publicity. This way you can be notified each and every month when brand new episodes of the Neighborly Reviews are released. But you can also donate directly if you feel guided to do so to Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh. We've included their official website below in the comments below, along with their social media platforms, so that you can continue the interaction with Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh and you can support this great organization. David, before we officially begin, we already have officially begun episode number 1, but before we dive into the pages of our first 3 children's books that we're going to be talking about, how important has it been for you to be able to give back to the children of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania over the course, especially after your time on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood completed? How important is it for you to still be able to give back to and support the children where you're at right now, especially in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania? If you'd like to talk about that briefly, if you could.
Yes, because, well, I was introduced to books through the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh. There, that Andrew Carnegie set up a lot of libraries in Pittsburgh, and there was one in the West End, and still there, West End of Pittsburgh, that my mother took me every week to get books out, or maybe every other week. I can't remember how often, but it was quite often. And I would get so many books, and we'd read them together, and we'd take them back. It was quite an adventure. And I remember my favorite book, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it, was called Mike the Tough Little Tugboat. And I began it out again and again and again. I love that book. And I don't know if I still have a copy of it, but my other favorite book was the series called Uncle Wiggly. And a lot of people don't remember Uncle Wiggly, but back when I was growing up, this is in the 1940s, Uncle Wiggly was very popular. In fact, I'll show you. There's a whole series. There's Uncle Wiggly.
There's Uncle Wiggly.
There's another Uncle Wiggly book. I still have them. There's a whole, this is just 2 or 3 of what I have. I must have the complete set. And one day my mother knew that I liked Uncle Wiggly. I mean, I always asked for it to be read. And one day we were visiting my aunt in New York City. We went for vacation for a week. And the author of Uncle Wiggly, his name is Howard R. Garris. I think he's passed away many years ago, but his name is Howard R. Garris. And somehow my mother found out where he lived. He lived in East Orange, New Jersey.
Okay.
And she made an appointment with him to take me to meet him. And I remember going into this old Victorian house where he lived and sitting in his living room while he was talking to my mother and me. And he signed a book for me, and I still have the autograph around somewhere. But that was so inspirational, to be able to actually meet somebody who wrote my favorite books. And, there's a saying that you may have heard of, if it's a Quaker saying, is attitudes are caught, not taught. And if you love doing something in front of children, they'll catch it. And if you love reading, and if you love reading to children, they'll catch that love, I think. And I think I'd caught it from my mother reading to me the Uncle Wiggly stories and other books. And then on my own, after I could read and could go to the library by myself and go to the school library. And to this day, I wish I had more time to read. My wife is a voracious reader. She reads all the time, and our kids do too, especially our daughter. So to answer your question, it all started back in Pittsburgh with the good old Carnegie Library system and my mother taking me there. And I think it needs someone to guide a child to reading, whether it's a bookstore or going to hear a reading. You don't have to buy books all the time. The library's there to go, but a lot of people like to buy books. Educators, I think, go to bookstores just to educate themselves to what's out there. And today, I think we're going to talk about 3 books that might appeal to an educator too. So, and I've read the 3 of them, and these are all just my thoughts, and nothing negative. It's all in the honor of reading.
I love that.
And that's what I'd like to come out of these little, I guess we call them what? Do we call these podcasts? Do we call these conversations? Well, at any rate, and I'm doing this as David Newell, not as a representative of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but just as David Newell, who was inspired by Fred Rogers. Yes,
Well,
but it's just me. So there's no connection to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood other than I loved my years working on the program.
You have such a big heart, David. You gave in the way in which you did before, and we're just very blessed for the way in which you're supporting empowered publicity and supporting children's authors, supporting Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh through neighborly reviews, and just the love and joy of reading. And I think that's so important. I did have one brief follow-up question before we dive into the pages of our first three children's books here on episode number 1 of Neighborly Reviews. We've obviously been seeing what's been happening over the past year with COVID and the pandemic. I think this is a very simple question, but it's a very important question. Why do you feel that children's books are very important, especially right now, for children, for parents, for families, and for educators?
Oh, I think especially for families with very young children too, who need to be busy, and for instance, my grandkids are young, and they live in Los Angeles, and the schools have been closed, and my daughter has just been at wit's end sometimes, keeping them entertained. And school, they have some homeschooling, but she has resorted to some books. And each child is older, so they have different levels. So the books have been a lifesaver for her. I guess I should put it that way. Now, I must admit that today, which we didn't have when we were growing up, there is the games that the electronic games and I think you have to give in to them a little bit. You can't cut them off completely. They're here to stay, and maybe there's a way of integrating them into books, into the, what's the word I want to use, the repertoire of everything that you use to entertain your children. The games are fine, electronic, but maybe a book can be tied into the whole package. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And I think we have to think about what the competition to books is these days too, don't you? There is competition with games, and kids would rather be watching some game. So I think it's up to parents and educators to really, it's even a harder chore in a way to get reading. And that's why Reading is Fundamental is great, because they go into schools, and you do it with well, I don't know what to call this, a telecast, broadcast, podcast, what? Bookcast.
I like that, a bookcast.
A bookcast.
We've coined a new term today, David, the first ever bookcast.
Well, that's what we're doing, and I'm doing it as David Newell, who loved reading as a child, and wish I had more time now to do reading, but I'm trying to make time to sit down and just enjoy a book. It's so easy to turn the latest TV series on and watch it, unless you're watching public television.
Yep. We're proud supporters of public television. In fact, I'm actually wearing, you probably can't see, but I'm wearing a Cookie Monster t-shirt that says, "Me love books," and the love is shaped in the form of a cookie.
Well, that's great. But see, that's how I think. Things like that, items like that, just promoting books is a wonderful thing to do. But I think that, going back to that phrase of attitudes are caught, not taught. If you love reading and you encourage your children to read, or read with them, or read them a book at night, I think they catch that love. They catch your love. And the important thing is, in a way, the important is the togetherness, not so much the book. The book is bringing together the parent and the child. And that's what's important. It's that bonding that I think the book brings together. And therefore, they may, as they grow older, they'll, I hope, have a love for books because of that bonding with the person who introduced them to books. And I think that's what my mother did for me, is take me to the library. And here I am talking to you on our new Bookcast.
On our Bookcast, episode number 1 of Neighborly Reviews. So David, I actually may be cracking the Guinness Book of World Records, or wanting to break the record for the number of times that one can say the word excite or excitement or excited within the course of, one specific bookcast, so to speak. We are proud to start off episode number 1 of Neighborly Reviews, sharing one of our featured children's authors here at Empowered Publicity. She is a Pittsburgh born and bred. She is Diane Scabilloni, the author of the brand new children's book, Rulers Don't Measure. And I just find this, first, before we dive into the pages of Rulers Don't Measure, again, Diane is from Pittsburgh, and it's just so great to see, again, you're from Pittsburgh. We're supporting Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh here on Neighborly Reviews, so that, the universe brings in Diane for us to be able to share Rulers Don't Measure. Now, when we think of a ruler, David, a ruler is something that helps to measure things, right? And there's this adorable character named Ruler that is reminding not only children of several specific things, but also the inner child within us. Could you help us go inside the pages of Rulers Don't Measure and your thoughts on Diane's book?
Yes, and Diane's book is faith-based. Of the 3 books, this is a faith-based book. And you mentioned the ruler, and it's interesting that the ruler is personified, but it's not a male or a female, a boy or a girl. It's a ruler.
It's a ruler.
So which I like. The ruler has been sent by the creator of the universe, and to go on a life journey to learn. And as the ruler was sent off on the journey, I wrote the words down: always know that you are very blessed, which is very interesting. But the ruler's journey was confusing, and not knowing what to do, the ruler just copied what other people did. For instance, I think I made a note here. The ruler met a weightlifter, and he didn't feel he was very strong. He couldn't do that, comparing again. Then he met a person with a lot of friends, and he didn't have any friends. I'm using I should say the ruler, but if I slip into one or the other, you'll know what I mean. Didn't have a lot of friends. And then he met a wealthy man. And again, the ruler compelled himself to the friends, and the weightlifter and the wealthy man didn't have any of that. And then what was interesting, a change was starting to come, and this is in the book. And by the way, I think this book could be a wonderful aid for a Bible class or a Sunday school, and we can talk about that later. But here's where a turnaround in the book came. That one day the ruler was resting under a tree, and it was a beautiful day, and the sun was out, and the ruler thought of the special words that he was given about that: you are my beloved child, always know that you are blessed. And that seems to be the turning point. What the ruler kept telling itself, I guess that's right, telling itself, those words. And then he met the same people again, the weightlifter, and he learned from the weightlifter, and he learned from the man who's very prosperous, and he found words to choose to tell himself that he doesn't have to measure up to others. He's got it within himself. Correct. Which I think that is a wonderful lesson. And he's got, and I wrote these down too, that Diane, words like beloved, blessed, strong, confident, and smart. And what the ruler realizes, that the ruler has all these qualities, and he doesn't have to so-called measure up to other people. And it's a symbolic book. I think the ruler, don't you think, is sort of a symbol for a person? And now the one thing that a younger child may not understand is what a ruler is. I don't think we use rulers so much today, but I think that's all part of the person reading the book to a younger child.
Correct.
To explain the ruler. And then and it finishes, and I wrote these down so I could remember. making choices and focusing on being the best you can be. And I think that's sort of the motto of the story. That's the lesson, I guess you'd say. And it finishes with, God made me a ruler, and I know I am loved and blessed without measurement. And now that is faith-based, and there are people who may prefer not to have something faith-based, but you know it when you go into the book. That's what it is, and it's a wonderful symbolic story, I think. And I was just thinking, I remember being in Sunday school classes when we would have a Bible lesson, and they would use the Bible, which is fine, but I thought they could use this book in conjunction maybe with the Bible, the Sunday school teacher or a parent even, and make it something more that they can. I think sometimes just reading from the Bible to young children can be a little confusing. But this is clearer. I think it takes something that is symbolic, and I think it's a great teaching tool, is what I'm trying to say, for a Sunday school class or for a parent who wishes to deal with the subject.
It's got such vibrant illustrations. And first of all, thank you for sharing your beautiful thoughts from your heart, David, about rulers don't measure. Just to add in a few things, my reflections on rulers don't measure, even if necessarily someone is not, faith-based, so to speak. Many children, especially now, and adults even as well too, they may have that childhood wound, that old story that says, I'm not enough. Not enough. I'm not enough. And that's an old story. It's an old tape that we played in the back of our mind. And I feel that us as parents, caregivers, and custodians of children, when we're raising the next generation, right, we're given the opportunity to help little ones so that they don't have to go through some of the same challenges that we did growing up. So if your little one, if your student is struggling with self-worth or self-esteem, there's a lot of great messages that are found within Rulers Don't Measure. I really love the fact that Ruler decides to start realizing that he is blessed beyond measure, hence the ruler analogy, that he's blessed beyond measure. And it's very easy to go outside and say, well, my friend has more money than I do, or my friend is more successful than I am, or, my friend has a girlfriend and I don't. There's different things. Again, that gets into that comparison analogy. But when you realize, and this is one of our fundamental principles here at Empowered Publicity, we always remind children that they're loved, they're special, they're whole, they're complete, just the way that they are. And sometimes, for adults, there's that inner child that's still within us, David. There's, little inner David that's inside you, little John that's inside me. And sometimes that can even be challenging for adults. And one of the things that I really feel is that if you're an adult, and even if you don't necessarily have any little ones, and you're looking to create a stronger relationship with your inner child, that Rulers Don't Measure can absolutely help you as well, too.
Yeah. And when you think of it, ruler is, in other words, the ruler became the ruler of its life. The ruler is his own ruler. She can make their own decisions. And I like that analogy too. Maybe it's something I'm reading into it. I don't know, but you're your own ruler, in other words. Does that make sense?
It does. That you are the ruler, that you're the co-creator of your own life. We're heading to one of our favorite neighbors next, north of the border in Canada, just right outside of Toronto, I believe, Peterborough. I believe that's how it's pronounced, Peterborough, Ontario. Lori Parks has created such a magical story for little ones called The Power of One, illustrated by P.S. Brooks and published by Miriam Laundry Publishing. Just a little backstory before we get into the neighborly review on The Power of One, David. I had the opportunities to be introduced to Lori several months ago, and I saw the cover art of her book, which we're now sharing on screen. And, when you walk into a bookstore, whether it be, a large brick and mortar bookstore, or if you go to your favorite independent bookstore, the first thing that you see in a book is the cover art. And I really love about children's books, they're so engaging to the eye that you really know. It's kind of like there's this heartfelt connection that you have with the book even before reading it. And, seeing the little boy on the cover, and you'll of course, describe a little bit more about the book, how it was actually inspired by Laurie's grandson, Nolan. There is the little boy, Nolan, that's holding the world. He's holding a globe on the cover, and there's just this magic, this beam of light that's coming from the earth, and there's these adorable animals and trees. It's just so it's so heavenly on so many levels, right? I think that, if heaven exists, I personally feel that it does, and a child goes to heaven, like that's just kind of the energy that would actually be there. And I'm excited that of course, we're heading north of the border. One of the great things about having these virtual connections, David, we can head to different areas across the country and around the world from the comforts of our own homes. So we're actually headed to Ontario, Canada, talk to our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors about the power of one.
With our Bookcast, right?
With our Bookcast, you're on Neighborly Reviews, yes.
Well, as you said, that Laurie's book is based on her grandson's experiences, and in the course of the so-called plot of the book, her grandson comes home quite sad and upset and worried, maybe, and because they had an assembly at school that day, and if I remember correctly, it was about the some children who go hungry around the world, specifically in Africa, which the assembly dealt with. And it really bothered the young boy. He came home worried about other people. And but the power of one, first of all, is a poem. It's not a prose, it's a poem, which I think lends itself. I think poetry is the way to go with this story. It just flows along, broken up in stanzas. And on the page, I'll talk, for instance, you see the boy sitting down with his mom to figure out the things that maybe bother him. And how can he was thinking to himself, how can I help the world when there's only one of me, only one? And that's a very important, because I'm sure we all, in some way, how can we possibly help? When we look at the news these days too, and a lot of terrible stuff happens, it's only me. How can I stop all of this? And the mom says, and I had to write this down, Mom says, you'll be surprised of what great things can come from being only one. And I think that's a wonderful line. And he notices the only thing, and I wrote those down too, because I couldn't remember them all, but in the course of the book, the different pages, he notices a shining star, which you can wish on. And he notices a honeybee, which help flowers. And he notices the moons, which bring the tides, and a music note that you can write songs with. And the guitar, the string that makes music, and one seed, things like that. And one hug. Or you can hug your dog and your cat or your mom, and all of those. And one I love you, show that you like other people. I like breaking all of that down into one, because each page has a little lesson in two sentences, and that's what I like. And one friend, and one yes I can, your courage, and one small kind act too. All of this is leading up to really helping others. And then, which I think this happened actually to Laurie's grandson, they went to the mall. In this case, in the book, the mom drove the little boy to the mall, and they bought a little doll that was made in Africa. And the money that they paid for the doll goes to help food distribution in certain parts of Africa. And he realized that was a lesson. He realized that here, the power of one, my helping buy the doll helped others. That one can be multiplied by 100, by 1,000. I think that's the point, that one is a very important one. It can help others immensely. He then realized he made a difference in someone's life. And so great things, and it ends with, so great things can come from only one, which I think it's a nice little story, and it's a poem. And it reads musically too. You know, when you're reading the poem, it rhymes, and it's the words I read it out loud to myself too, and then the words are almost musical. It's like you're singing a little song in a way. I found it very entertaining, and I think it'd be a wonderful book to read to younger children. And it goes back to the person, the parent, the educator who's reading the book with a class or maybe with one child at bedtime. Great lessons in it. And I think I didn't realize, in a way, I learned something too, because, you know, when you look all around, there's only one, and you can look at a star, and you can look at a seed, and you can look at a bead, and see how important that only one is. And if nothing else, I hope out of this book, the child can realize how important he or she is. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does, David. And thank you again for sharing from your heart. A few things, if I may add in as well, too. You know, when we remember the power of one, when we remember our inherent good, the love that we have within us, then we attract those same people and experiences into our lives. So you obviously have a special relationship with children. You care about children. You love reading. I do as well. So we were brought together for the greater good to be able to share our bookcast. I just like saying the phrase bookcast, by the way. Our neighborly reviews that we're doing here each and every month. And, you know, as the expression goes, like attracts like. So when you take the time to, you know, put good out into the world from your one heart, you'll be attracting other people into your life as well. Lori, at the end of her book, has a beautiful power of one pledge. And we're actually sharing this on screen for our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors. So feel free to read along with us if you will. I have a gift, a superpower. It's called the power of one. If I believe in it and me, then all things can be done. I pledge to use my power for good by looking for small ways to share one act of kindness with one person every day. With love and courage in my heart, a hero I can be. Some great things come from only one. I'll let that one be me. I get goosebumps talking about that. And then, David, plus there's this little pledge. And I think this is great, especially if you're helping children to create more empowering experiences in their life. And I think that this is a great pledge for us big kids too, as well, right? You know, like, you know, when you go to the bank and they ask you to sign something, it's like, oh, I got to sign this kind of thing, right? This is something very encouraging, very empowering to sign. And it says, and we're sharing this on screen as well too, my power of one pledge. This is a personal pledge. I pledge to find one way each day to help in my own special way. One small act is all it takes to make this world a better place. Some great things come from only one. I'll let that one be me. And you can sign your name and you can date it. And one of the really cool things, David, is that, you know, when you sign something, you're really bringing it into your reality, which is great.
That's true. You know, and that pledge that you just read, that you signed, that's almost a summary. In fact, it is a summary of the book.
Yes.
In a way. And when you go back to Diane's book, the ruler, in this case, there's a ruler here too. You're your own person again. There's a lot of connections between the three books that were picked out, don't you think? At least so far. And what would you say would be Let me see the age range for the.
I would say that this is a perfect book for little ones. You could obviously read to toddlers as well too, but I feel this is that, I always call it the perfect age, but all children are the perfect age, ranging anywhere from maybe around like 4 to 8, 4 to 9. I think is probably the perfect range. But it's interesting, when I read this book for the first time, this instantly became one of my favorite children's books. And this goes back to me growing up all the way to now as a 39-year-old adult. So I feel that, whether you are 5 or 5 at heart, that you will love and find a lot of joy inside the pages of The Power of One.
As you were saying that, I don't know what made me think of it, but since we're in Pittsburgh, I'll give Pittsburgh a little plug, that the University of Pittsburgh has a special course within their library science course of children's literature. You can specialize in children's literature. And I don't know if that is a course that most library schools have. I don't know, but I just happen to think that I've known a few people who've taken that course, and it must be fascinating. I just feel that we're just getting a little teeny introduction to children's books, but just look how many children's books there are, and the stories that they represent. And I just hope that our Bookcast encourages people to visit a library, their local bookstore, and what I love, and still love them, are the local independent bookstores. And they always have a little children's area, maybe with a rocking chair and another comfortable chair, and books out on the table so kids can peruse them, which I think are wonderful. You can handle them. They're not just on the shelf to be sold. Right. They're there, you can touch. And I think anything that can be tactile like that, it sticks with you. And I just hope that our Bookcast does that.
Neighborly Reviews, yes. In San Diego mentioned before we head into our final book here on episode number 1 of our Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. Here in San Diego, actually in La Jolla, there's a well-known independent bookstore called Warwick's, Warwicks. And, when I went there for the first time, this was before I had moved out to San Diego, when I was visiting here, this is back in 2019, they, as you described, like they have that children's nook, like the word nook comes to mind. And they've got, they've got a section for like middle grade, then they've got like a huge section for picture books. And it's just like, some of my favorite neighbors, some of my dear friends in the kid lit community, they have some of their books featured there. So, John Parr, who's one of the top award-winning illustrators, former guest on the Empowered Publicity children's book Spotlight series. He had one of his books there. A husband and wife tandem in Pennsylvania, Jonathan Stutzman and Heather Fox, also former guests on the Empowered Publicity children's book Spotlight series, which, by the way, if you are new to the Empowered Publicity YouTube channel, we share and we interview. We're very blessed to interview some of the shining stars in the kidlit community, some of the top award-winning and best-selling children's authors and illustrators from across the country and around the world. So you can peruse your favorite episode of the children's book Spotlight series. But just walking into a bookstore, and as you said, there's something about an independent bookstore, because yes, all of the big stores, like in Canada, you've got Chapters and Indigo, and then here in the U.S. there's Barnes and Noble. In the U.K. they have Waterstones, I believe it's called, right? So those stores serve their purpose as well too. Whenever you support local businesses, small businesses, you're literally giving back to your community. So I really love. I think this is something that we'll be mentioning in future editions of our Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, is the importance of supporting not only your independent bookstores, but supporting your local libraries as well too, because they have such, you walk in there, you get this library cart, and it's like you strike the jackpot. You have a palace of books that are surrounding you. It's like you're a co-billionaire of love. You have so much abundance that's around you. David, I haven't been to the library, actually, believe it or not, small confession. I haven't been to the library since I moved out to San Diego, and it's been almost 5 months. So you're helping me to remind me to go to my favorite local library.
I still go to libraries. We have a small library in the little village where we live that's connected with, it has one other branch. And I go there, and sometimes I'll just go to read the New York Times, just as just to go out, just go in and browse around the books. And when I go to a library, I say, oh, I'd like to read that. I'd like to read that. And there's just so much there that you have to go in, I think, with a purpose to find the book that you want.
With an intention.
But on the other hand, and I hope adults can introduce children to this too, is go and just browse all the sections, go to the children's section and go to the adult sections. And the other thing that's happening with a lot of libraries, that they're making them community centers where you can go in and there's lectures, there may be a film shown. It's more than just a library. And I think in turn, bookstores like the big ones, like the big box stores, Barnes and Noble, are helping libraries in many cities too, helping with discounts and so forth. I don't know how they work that, but there's a purpose to, I hope they both survive. We need bookstores and we need libraries. And I think the Bookcast may help people realize that. And that's why I like to be an ambassador for reading as David Newell, just David Newell, me, a private citizen, David Newell.
I love that. And again,
so we have one more book to talk about, right?
We do, yes. We are winding down our time with the newest member of the Empowered Publicity family, David Newell. We hope that you are enjoying episode number 1 of Empowered Publicity's Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. You know, David has coined the term Bookcast, so it's now the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, which again, the first Tuesday of every month, we will be releasing new episodes. But before we, of course, before we forecast into episode number 2, the final book, also one of my favorite classic children's books. We've gone from Pittsburgh, well, we've actually gone from San Diego to Pittsburgh, to still in Pittsburgh with Diane, to Ontario. Now we're going all the way to Germany. As one of our favorite neighbors, Markkizaac Mago. He likes to just be called Mark. So Markkizaac, they're interchangeable, but his brand new book, My Super Grandma. And in this book, this little girl, Zaya, she shares the story about her grandmother and why she is a superhero for her. Just the one thing that I wanted to mention, David, is that, I've got as many people may know, or if you're new to Empowered Publicity, I had a special relationship with my grandmother when she was alive, and still very much do so now. She had passed away. She transitioned nearly 8 years ago. And I'm so blessed and grateful because I feel that her spirit is with me, and she's been bringing these wonderful children's authors and children's books such as My Super Grandma into my life. And I think it's just so important because, many children have lost their grandmothers, unfortunately, during COVID and during the pandemic, over the course of the past year. Take us inside the pages of My Super Grandma, from one grandpa to talking about the importance of grandma.
Now, is the little girl's name Zara, Z-A-R-A? Is it pronounced?
Zaya, Z-A-Y-A.
Z-A-Y-A. Okay, I made a typo here. So
that's okay.
Okay. Well, I think she would be about 10 or 11 years old in the book when she visits her grandma. She loves to visit her grandma. And again, I was very close to both sets of grandparents, and especially my grandmother. And I loved to visit their house. And it's almost like my story in a way, because when I would go to my grandmother's house, she would always say, "Did you eat?" And that's what Zaya, right? Zaya is asked, "Did you eat?" And in fact, she said, "Did you eat Davy?" She always called me Davy. "Did you eat Davy?" And that's what Zaya's grandmother asked her. And yes, I did, but I always liked my grandmother's dessert. She made the best coconut cream pie. And it seems that's what this grandmother does too. And I immediately associate with Zaya. Her grandmother knitted and my grandmother crocheted. So all of this is set up in the first part of the book. It established the grandmother enjoying her granddaughter, and she helped with the homework, and she drove her to school, and she helped other people. And there was a warm bond between the grandparents. That's wonderful to have that bond between grandparents in a book. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful example of bonding. But grandmother had a secret. And this book of the three is probably the funniest. Has a touch of humor in the lesson in the book. Grandmother had a secret, and some nights Grandma snuck out of the house, and Zaya decided to follow her and see where she was going those evenings that she snuck out of the house. And she discovered that Grandma likes to help people. And in fact, she was on a train. Grandma got on a train, or maybe it was a subway, something like that. And there were some boys trying to steal a dog from somebody on the train. And Grandma, now this where it saves the day. And she did some, Grandma did some karate chops, and she had her golden cane, and that's when she became super grandma and saved the day. And I think the lesson comes a few pages later, where grandma tells her granddaughter, and I had to write this down, don't wait for great things to happen to you. Be brave and live your dreams, take risks, and be a superhero for people around you. And that's what she was. And you know something, I was just wondering as I was reading the book, if grandma's trip sneaking out of the house was the granddaughter's dream. Did she dream this, or did it actually happen? Either way, it works. You can take it your own way. I want to think that grandma snuck out of the house and saved the day. But and then there was one other thing. It's not a long book either. And I think it's direct, humorous, and loving. It has all those aspects to it. And see, I wrote a few other things that I wanted to make sure. Yes, and it's what young people can learn from the older generation, and vice versa. The older generation can learn from the young. In a way, that's what this book has. And you know something too, and I wrote this down because I wanted to mention it. Mark works in a nursing home in Germany, and that's where the inspiration or the idea for this book came from. And that was very interesting. I found that very interesting. He took something he sees every day and put it into a lesson of sorts. And I think this is a fun book to read. Super Grandma, yes. With her golden cane and her karate chops. That's, it would make a fun little 10-minute cartoon, if that's the word you want to use. A little animated story. You can animate the story, I think, very well. And from the book we just read before,
Power of One. The
Power of One. In a way, since it's poetry, you don't need pictures necessarily. The words carry it. The pictures are wonderful. But each book has its own specialty, has its own way of getting the message across. And I love the poetry. I love the humor in this, and I love the faith base that Diane put into her book. So we have three different examples here of people helping others. I think that's the universal theme that goes through the three books of helping others, and how important that is to teach that to children through books.
I love that.
I think I'll get off my soapbox now.
Oh, no. This is a very heart-centered soapbox, David. By all means, we also do want to thank Arwa Salome. She did a wonderful job in illustrating My Super Grandma. Just such colorful illustrations in the book as well, too. David, I know that we were talking about this in the Empowered Publicity Green Room. Mark has helped to bring grandmothers closer together with their grandchildren during the pandemic. We've, a lot of grandparents have not been able to spend time physically with their grandchildren. And Mark had set out an intention because, we're putting out the intention that very soon all the restrictions lift, people are able to congregate together in, decent sized groups. Families are able to become closer together once again. I'm excited to know that you are, because Mark is set to release this fall the highly anticipated follow-up to My Super Grandma, My Super Grandpa.
Oh,
so he's going to be reminding all of us why grandparents overall, both grandmothers and grandfathers, are superheroes. And you're a grandfather in your own right, David. You are a superhero yourself.
Yeah, we have 6 grandchildren. We have 3 children, and in fact, our son lives in Toronto, and they just had their second child, and a boy, and they have a boy and a girl, and I can't wait to read to them. Then we have a son who lives in Pittsburgh he has a young son, and then 3 are in California, and they're 1 teenager and 2 11 and a 9-year-old, 2 boys and 4 girl grandkids, and I've had more experience with the older ones reading, and I haven't met our youngest grandchild yet because of the pandemic. They can't, travel. So I'm looking forward to being able to read to them too.
I do look forward to when you'll be able to travel out to Toronto, travel out to California.
Toronto is not that far from Pittsburgh. It's about a 5-hour drive. It's close by in a way, but LA is not a close drive. But the closest drive is our son here in Pittsburgh, which is only 10 minutes away. So I get to see number 5 grandson more often than the other ones, but he's only 10 months, so it'll be a little while yet before I can read to him, but I look forward to it.
Well, David, I think that we've definitely opened up a door, and we've walked in sharing this wonderful magic, this wonderful messages that we've shared with all of these books. And we hope that these children's books that David and I have delivered you, our friends and neighbors, our listeners and viewers, from our favorite neighbors, or some of our favorite children's authors from around the world. We hope that very much that this helps you and your little ones in some way, shape, or form. Again, if episode number 1 of Empowered Publicity's Neighborly Reviews Bookcast has brought love and joy and inspiration and healing into your heart, the heart of your inner child, or the heart of your little one, or if you feel that someone could benefit from our bookcast here at Empowered Publicity. David has coined the term, our Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. If you feel that it needs to be shared with someone in need, we encourage you to subscribe to Empowered Publicity's official YouTube channel, and to share episode number 1 of our Neighborly Reviews Bookcast on your favorite social media platforms. If you are a children's author or a children's illustrator and would like to be able to have your book featured and reviewed here on Empowered Publicity's Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, you can connect with us via our official website at empoweredpublicity.com, or any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen: Facebook and Instagram at Empowered Publicity, and Twitter at Empowered_PR. If you also would like to be able to find more information about Empowered Publicity, how we can be of service to you, if you are a children's author and are wishing to share your inspiring story in the release of your brand new children's book, you can learn more about our publicity work, our PR services through Empowered Publicities. We would love to see how we can be of service to you and help your dreams take flight in 2021 and beyond, so that you can connect with more children, more parents, more educators across the country and around the world. And yes, we do want to give a special shout out again to our newest friends and neighbors at Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh. Once again, they're an independent affiliate of Reading is Fundamental, the oldest and largest nonprofit children's literacy organization in the United States. Their mission is providing children with the resources, the motivation, and opportunities to develop a lifelong love of reading. They take care of over 20,000 children in the Pittsburgh area alone that come from low-income families, provide them such great things as children's books, literacy tools, developmental resources. Again, we are proud to be able to donate from Empowered Publicity financial contributions to Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh. If you feel called and guided to donate, however small or large your contribution may be, we've included a link to the Reading is Fundamental website, and you can be able to contact them and donate what you feel guided to do so, to be able to help our little neighbors, especially in need in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. This is one of the most important things that we're doing with Empowered Publicity, is because there's a lot of non-for-profits, a lot of charities that have been struggling during the pandemic, a lot of those black tie affair galas that have helped to raise money for these sorts of organizations over the past year. It's all been virtual. So we're doing our part here at Empowered Publicity. And of course, to be able to give back to the children in need, David and I have united our hearts together for Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh. So again, we've included their website link below, and for more information on how you can donate whatever you feel guided to do so to Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh. David, I'm really looking forward to episode number 2, which will be coming your way the first week of April. It's interesting to note, David, I think I mentioned this in several conversations. I actually live by the San Diego trolley. It's no joke. Several times a day, I will hear the trolley bell. And that's a little, that's a little wink and a nod, so to speak. But, whenever we hear the trolley, as we like to say, it's time to go. So we appreciate all of your support. We appreciate you tuning in to episode number 1 of Empowered Publicity's Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. We want to thank you for your continued support of Empowered Publicity. We also want to thank you for your support of children's authors, children's illustrators, libraries, and independent bookstores around the world who all support the love and joy of reading, the emotional development of our little ones across the country and around the world, and of course, that love of children's books as well. But above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world. So for David Newell, for myself, John Masiulionis, we hope that you've enjoyed episode number 1 of Empowered Publicity's Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, and we look forward to seeing all of you once again next month for episode number 2 of our Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. Until then, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and our fellow shining stars, have a beautiful and peaceful month ahead, and we'll see you once again very soon. Take care.